Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going depth on social anxiety disorder.
Yeah, it's a condition that goes way beyond just being shy.
Exactly. And that's something our source from the National Institute of Mental Health really emphasizes.
Absolutely.
We're going to try to equip you with, a super clear understanding of this whole thing.
Yeah, and hopefully bust some myths along the way.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I used to think social anxiety was all about, being afraid of public speaking.
Right, that's a pretty common misconception.
But apparently it can affect tons of different areas of your life.
It really can. We're talking about like a persistent and intense fear of being judged in, well, pretty much any social situation.
Wow, so it's a lot more than just, not wanting to go to parties or whatever.
Oh, for sure. And the thing is, it can have a major impact on your daily life, your work, your school, your relationships,
I see.
things that are important to you.
Yeah, that makes sense. So can you give us some concrete examples, like what kind of situations might trigger social anxiety?
Sure. Think about meeting new people
Yeah, okay.
or speaking up in a meeting at work.
Oh, I hate doing that.
Right. Even something as simple as using a public restroom can be a trigger for some people.
Oh, wow. The public restroom thing, I never thought about that.
Yeah, it might seem kind of strange at first.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, if you're worried about what other people are thinking about you,
Oh, yeah.
it makes sense that even something like that could be anxiety provoking.
That's true.
So it's really a broad range of situations that can be a problem.
So how do you know if it's actual social anxiety disorder or just, being a little shy?
Right. It's an important distinction.
Yeah.
Shyness might make you a little uncomfortable in social situations.
Yeah, sure.
But you can usually push through it and manage.
Okay.
With social anxiety disorder, though, the fear and anxiety are so overwhelming. They can be completely debilitating.
Oh, wow.
It's like your brain gets stuck in this fight or flight mode,
Oh.
even when there's no real danger.
Oh, I see. So it's not just about feeling awkward. It's about those feelings completely taking over.
Exactly. And then there are the physical symptoms, too. Imagine, blushing, sweating, trembling,
Yeah.
your heart racing,
Right.
all because of a social situation.
Yeah, I can see how that would make things even worse.
And that's not even mentioning the psychological symptoms.
Yeah.
The NIMH mentions stuff like your mind going blank, feeling nauseous, dizziness.
Oh, the mind going blank thing, I've totally experienced that before presentations. It's the more anxious you get, the harder it is to think straight.
Exactly. And that just feeds the anxiety even more.
So it's a vicious cycle.
It really is.
So if you're experiencing these intense symptoms, that's a pretty clear sign that it might be more than just shyness.
Right. It's really important to recognize the signs and not dismiss them.
Yeah. Okay.
Early intervention is super important when it comes to social anxiety disorder.
Well, this is already pretty heavy stuff, and I know we've only just scratched the surface. Where do you think we should go next?
I think it'd be good to explore the roots of social anxiety disorder.
Okay.
What causes it? Is it nature or nurture?
Right. Good question.
And, well, the answer is usually a little bit of both.
Okay, now this is where it's really interesting. Tell me more.
So the NIMH points to both genetic and biological factors. There's some evidence that it can run in families.
Oh, so it can be hereditary.
Potentially.
Right.
But it's not
Right.
like a guarantee. It's not like if your mom has it, you'll definitely have it too.
Right.
It's more complicated than that. The research suggests that environmental factors also play a huge role. Things like early life experiences, social pressures, learned behaviors.
So it's a perfect storm of your genes and your environment.
Pretty much. And here's a really interesting nuance that the source highlights. There's this subtype called performance anxiety.
Performance anxiety.
Yeah, imagine someone who's totally fine in most social settings, but they completely freeze up if they have to, give a presentation or perform on stage.
Oh, yeah. I know some people like that.
It's all about what triggers that intense fear response.
So some people are more prone to it in certain situations.
Exactly. And it really highlights how complex this condition is.
It really does. And understanding that complexity is the first step towards getting help, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about what social anxiety disorder is and kind of where it comes from.
Right.
But how do you actually, deal with it? What can you do about it?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
The good news is there are a bunch of resources out there to help people manage this.
Okay, sounds good to hear.
And the NIMH source, they really emphasize that a professional diagnosis from a healthcare provider is essential.
Okay, so you're saying don't just try to figure this out on your own.
Exactly. Self-diagnosis it can be, well, tricky.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
It's important to rule out any other, underlying conditions and stuff
Okay.
and make sure you're getting the right treatment.
So what does treatment for social anxiety disorder usually look like? What's involved?
Well, therapy is often like a cornerstone of treatment.
Okay, so talk therapy.
Yeah, and specifically cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT.
CBT, yeah, I've heard of that. Isn't it all about like changing your thought patterns?
That's the basic idea.
Okay.
It helps you challenge those negative thoughts that fuel your social anxiety.
Okay.
And then you can start to develop healthier coping mechanisms.
So how does that actually work? Can you give me like an example?
Sure. Let's say you have to give a presentation at work.
Ugh, the worst.
Someone with social anxiety might immediately think, I'm going to mess this up.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to judge me. I'll make a fool of myself.
Oh, yeah, I've totally been there.
Right.
Right.
But CBT helps you identify those thoughts.
Okay.
And then, you can kind of ask yourself, is there any evidence to support this?
Oh, interesting.
Like, what's the worst that could actually happen?
So you're basically like putting those negative thoughts on trial.
Exactly. And that's how you can start to reframe your thinking
Okay.
in a more realistic and positive light.
I like that. Are there other types of therapy that are good for social anxiety disorder?
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Exposure therapy is another common one.
Okay.
It involves gradually confronting your fears,
Okay.
but it's in a safe and controlled environment.
So it's like dipping your toe in the water instead of like jumping into the deep end.
That's a great way to put it. And there's also acceptance and commitment therapy,
Okay.
or ACT. It's all about mindfulness.
Mindfulness.
Yeah, and accepting your anxiety, rather than fighting it.
Oh, that's interesting.
So yeah, there are a lot of different therapeutic approaches.
Okay, so it sounds like finding the right therapist is super important.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's all about finding someone you feel comfortable with
Okay.
and who understands your needs.
That makes sense. So we've talked about therapy, but what about medication?
Yeah.
Is that something that people with social anxiety disorder can consider?
Medication can definitely be helpful,
Okay.
especially when it's combined with therapy.
Gotcha. What kinds of medications are we talking about here?
Well, antidepressants are often prescribed for social anxiety.
Really?
Yeah, SSRIs and SNRIs, they increase the levels of certain neurotransmitters in your brain,
Okay.
and that helps to regulate your mood and your anxiety.
So they're not just for depression.
Not at all. They can be very effective for anxiety disorders too.
Wow, that's interesting. What else? Are there other medications that people might take?
They're also beta blockers. Those can help control those physical symptoms we were talking about earlier.
Oh, okay, like the racing heart, the sweating.
Right, exactly.
You're right.
They're often used for performance anxiety. They help people feel more composed physically.
Interesting. So if you had to give a speech, a beta blocker might help you feel less shaky.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that they don't actually address the psychological aspects of anxiety.
Oh, okay.
They're more of a temporary fix for those physical symptoms.
Got it. Are there any other medications that are used for social anxiety disorder?
Sometimes doctors might prescribe benzodiazepines. They work really quickly to reduce anxiety,
Okay.
but they're usually only prescribed for short periods of time because they can be habit forming.
Oh, so there's a risk of dependence.
Right.
Okay, so it sounds like medication can be a helpful tool,
Yeah.
but it's not a magic bullet.
It's not a cure-all.
Right, and it's important to talk to your doctor and weigh the benefits and risks.
Absolutely. Finding the right balance is key.
Okay, so we've covered therapy and medication.
Yeah.
What about support groups? Are those helpful for people with social anxiety?
Support groups can be super valuable.
Okay.
They provide a safe space
Okay.
to connect with people who are going through the same things.
So you can kind of share your experiences and stuff.
Exactly. It can be really validating to know that you're not alone.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And, you can challenge your distorted thinking and stuff.
Okay.
And learn coping strategies from other people.
So it's like a community of people who get it.
Yeah, it's really powerful.
Okay, so how do you find a support group? Where do you even start looking?
Well, the NIMH source mentions both in-person and online options. You could, ask your therapist for recommendations,
Okay.
or just do a quick Google search,
Easy enough.
or you could check out online mental health communities. There are tons of resources out there.
Okay, that's good to know. So we've talked about therapy, medication, and support groups.
Right.
But are there things people can do on their own to manage their social anxiety?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
The NIMH source actually talks about the importance of a healthy lifestyle.
Oh, okay. So like taking care of yourself.
Exactly. Think about like the basics,
Mm-hmm.
getting enough sleep,
Mm.
exercising regularly,
Yeah.
eating a balanced diet. These things can make a big difference.
Yeah. They're good for everyone. Right.
Yeah.
But maybe even more important when you're dealing with anxiety.
Definitely. And don't underestimate relaxation techniques. Things like deep breathing exercises
Oh, yeah.
or meditation.
Okay.
Those can be really helpful. They kind of help you calm your nervous system and reduce anxiety.
Yeah, I've tried those before. They definitely help me feel more centered.
Right. They're like little tools you could use anytime, anywhere.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of different treatment options and coping strategies.
Yeah.
But what about the people around someone with social anxiety? What can they do to be supportive?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think the best thing you can do is be patient and understanding. Remember that? Like their anxiety is real.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And, don't dismiss their fears
Okay.
or try to push them into situations that make them uncomfortable.
So no tough love. No, like, throwing them in the deep end.
Probably not the best approach. Focus on creating like a safe and supportive environment.
Okay.
Encourage them to get professional help.
Okay.
Maybe even offer to go to appointments with them
Yeah, that's a good idea.
if that would help.
Yeah. And just, like, being there for them.
Absolutely.
Listening without judgment.
Sometimes that's the most powerful thing you can do.
Okay. Well, that's really great advice. It sounds like there's a lot that can be done to manage social anxiety disorder.
There is.
But I know it's not always easy. What would you say to someone who's, like, feeling really discouraged right now?
Well, first of all, don't give up hope.
Okay, that's important.
Social anxiety disorder is a treatable condition.
Okay.
With the right support, you can overcome this.
I love that. It's such an important message of hope. Things can get better.
They can. And, don't be afraid to ask for help. Talk to your doctor, a therapist, a friend, a family member. There are people who care about you.
That's a great reminder.
It's okay to lean on others.
It's more than, okay, it's important.
You're not alone in this. Remember that.
Yeah, and there are resources available to help you through this.
You just have to take that first step.
Okay, so we've covered a lot in our deep dive into social anxiety disorder.
Yeah, we've talked about the symptoms,
The causes.
all sorts of treatments and coping strategies.
Right, but now we want to, hear from you.
Yeah, we've gotten some awesome questions from our listeners.
And we're excited to share our perspectives.
For sure.
Okay, so let's jump right in. This first question comes from a listener who asks, what's the difference between social anxiety disorder and just being an introvert?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I think a lot of people wonder about that.
And it's really important to understand that introversion and social anxiety disorder, they're two separate things.
Okay.
Introversion is a personality trait,
Okay.
It's about where you get your energy from, how you prefer to, interact with the world.
So introverts might enjoy spending time alone or in small groups.
Right, but that doesn't mean they have social anxiety.
Got it.
Introverts,
Yeah.
they might actually really enjoy social situations,
Okay.
but find them, draining after a while,
Yeah, that makes sense.
But someone with social anxiety disorder, they experience, intense fear and anxiety in those situations.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if they're, introverted or extroverted.
So it's more about the level of distress
Exactly.
and how much it's impacting your life.
Social anxiety can be so debilitating, it can prevent people from, doing the things they want to do or need to do.
Okay, that makes sense. Here's another question, this one from a parent. They ask, how do I know if my child has social anxiety disorder or if they're just going through it like a shy phase?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
It's a common concern for parents. I think it's important to remember that some shyness is totally normal, especially in younger kids.
Yeah, for sure.
So, when should parents start to worry?
Right.
I think it's all about paying attention to the intensity,
Yeah.
and, the duration of their shyness.
So if it's a long time and it's really intense.
Yeah, exactly. If it's causing them a lot of distress or, interfering with their daily life,
Okay.
maybe they're refusing to go to school
Oh, wow.
or avoiding social events, or they have physical symptoms of anxiety,
Okay, yeah.
then, it might be time to seek some professional guidance.
So it's about looking for those red flags and kind of trusting your gut as a parent.
Absolutely. And if you're not sure, it never hurts to, talk to a doctor or a therapist.
Right, get a professional opinion.
They can help you figure out what's going on.
Okay, great advice. Here's a question that I think a lot of people can probably relate to. A listener asks, how do I support a loved one who has social anxiety disorder?
That's such an important question.
Yeah,
It means you really care about that person.
right.
So where do you begin? I think, the foundation is patience and understanding.
Oh.
Remembering that their anxiety is real. It's really affecting their life.
Right.
And you want to avoid, like, dismissing their fears or pushing them into situations that make them uncomfortable.
Right. So no tough love, no throwing them in the deep end.
Probably not the best strategy.
Uh-huh.
Instead, focus on creating that safe and supportive environment.
Okay, so be there for them.
Yeah, encourage them to seek professional help. Maybe even offer to, like, go to appointments with them
No, that's a good idea.
if they're feeling anxious about it.
And just celebrate their successes.
Oh, yeah.
No matter how small they seem.
Exactly. Every step counts.
Okay, we have time for one last question. This one comes from a listener who asks, what's one piece of advice you'd give to someone who's struggling with social anxiety disorder, like right now?
That's a tough one. I think the most important thing is to remember that you're not alone.
Yeah.
Millions of people around the world experience this.
It's easy to feel isolated.
It is, and that's why it's so important to, like, connect with others, whether that's through therapy, a support group, even just talking to a trusted friend or family member.
So breaking that isolation
Yeah, building a support system.
and remembering you're not your anxiety.
Exactly.
It doesn't define you.
And never give up hope.
Yeah, recovery is possible.
Absolutely.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into social anxiety disorder.
We hope this has been helpful.
Yeah, and if you're struggling out there, remember, there are resources available.
You don't have to go through this alone.
Thanks for joining us. We look forward to diving into more topics with you soon.